Hello and welcome to another edition of Critical Q&A, the show where I answer your questions based on what you've left for me in the comment section of my Q&A videos or have sent to me by email at askchrisshelton@gmail.com. As is usual, I have a couple of things to go over. Actually, just one major one. And if this is something that I'm going to be talking about, something that is of interest to people who have been following and supporting my channel, and sort of what's going on with some internal, not internal, but with some workings of my channel. If this is something that is, of no interest to you whatsoever, and you just want to get on with the questions and don't want to hear me going on about, various things that I feel I really need to tell you guys about, then you can skip to this point here. I'm going to put it on the screen where I will start talking about answering questions. But if you are interested in what I have to say here, then please keep listening. Okay. The YouTube has recently been making some pretty systemic big changes to its ad structure. This has been called adpocalypse, where YouTube creators are having many of their videos demonetized because YouTube is listening more to its advertisers than it is to its content creators. And this is, fairly predictable, I suppose. I mean, YouTube is, I'm not trying to deride YouTube particularly, although I am extremely disappointed in YouTube, because it is called YouTube, so it's supposed to be for, content creators. And now, because it has been bought by Google and it has, become this multi-billion-dollar corporation that is only really interested in making billions more, it's now moving into streaming services and YouTube Red and YouTube TV and this sort of thing, and it's kind of leaving a lot of us little guys behind. So those of us who have been, utilizing YouTube as a platform to create content and throw it out here for y'all, that function is still there, but the idea of getting ad revenue as a YouTube partner is kind of going by the wayside and to a great degree because of what is deemed advertiser-friendly content. And that is a very arbitrary thing. There are some very general guidelines on the part of YouTube as to what is or isn't advertiser-friendly, and apparently my videos are not. So I have had videos demonetized that I did not even know were demonetized until I literally had to go through the list of all of my videos and check them out. And I've posted a couple recent videos that were not deemed advertiser friendly and had to click to get manual reviews done on them, and one of them or two of them were re-monetized, but another two are up in the air right now, and it's all pretty up in the air. Point being that I can't rely on YouTube really for this, and I guess the advertiser unfriendliness of whatever it is about my videos is, I don't know if it's a little bit of swearing, I don't know if it's the content, I don't know if if some of what I talk about on this channel, which is all about a positive message to help people and educate people, but I use words that might be controversial, like cult. And so YouTube goes, rah, no advertisers want to advertise on anything like that. Which is, like I said, I could not more strongly disagree with what YouTube is doing. Bottom line is, if you enjoy the content that I produce and you would like to help me to produce more of that content on a full-time basis, which is what I do here, then please join me on Patreon, because it is that which is not going away, it's not going anywhere, and it is my most stable point of income that keeps me going, right? It's not the only thing I do in order to make money, because it's not enough for me to support myself with just what I make on Patreon, but it is a lot. It is the vast majority of what I support myself with, and I very, very, very much appreciate everyone who has contributed to what this channel is and is about and my efforts with this through Patreon. Now, just to be clear, Patreon is not a one-time deal. When you sign up with Patreon, it's a monthly recurring payment, okay? I think some people misunderstand that and they sign on to Patreon, and then the next month I see them sign off and I'm like, I guess they didn't get it. So let me be really clear that I'm fine on getting one-time donations. Don't get me wrong. That's why I have a PayPal button. And you can also, contribute via Google or something. But Patreon is really the thing that really keeps this whole thing going. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I'm not right now in any danger of shutting down my channel or anything. We're not at that point. And this is a concern to me, right? Not getting a chunk of revenue that I have been getting is concerning. And you can Google this if you want the full story on what YouTube has been doing and why they've been making these changes. YouTube is going to do what YouTube's going to do, right? They provide this platform. I use this platform. Millions of others do. YouTube can make whatever corporate decisions they want, no matter how greedy or whatever they were unsupportive those decisions are for people like me, who are just us lowly little content creators that try to eke out a living. And believe me, I'm not eking out any kind of great living doing this, but it's a living, and it's worth my time and worth my effort to do it because I'm helping people, which is what I've always been about. There's some controversy in some quarters about making money as an activist or as a YouTuber. And I think a lot of that controversy and criticism comes from people who literally have absolutely no clue how hard of a job this is. And this is way more than a full-time job. And just because it looks easy doesn't mean it is easy. So anyway, enough said about all that. I just wanted to let you guys know that that's something that's happening, and it's not great. And so I could use your help to keep going here and keep doing what I'm doing. I have some really big plans for continuing my Basics of Scientology series, for doing some very serious Scientology research into some things to get to the bottom of where a lot of this stuff comes from, why Hubbard put it together the way that he did, and how and I want to learn about this stuff so that I can apply it to other destructive cult groups as well, and help in the healing and recovery process for people who get out of all of these kind of groups, and also help in the big wide world, as I've made the point many times, because the destructive cult mechanisms and techniques are not just limited to destructive cults. They're used in politics, they're used in religion, they're used in news media, and these things are manipulative and they are harmful, and I want to do what I can to do my part to talk about that, educate about that, and help people out so they don't fall for scammy stuff and propaganda and thought reform techniques that are used on them. So, all right, that's all that, and let's go ahead and get on with your questions now. Linda Sen. For a very long time, I was involved with the charismatic movement that has wormed its way through a lot of churches. I no longer go to church, though I do still consider myself a Christian. I've been watching your YouTube videos about being involved in Scientology. Once you got out, did you deal with a lot of anger? If so, how long did it last? If you dealt with anger, what did you do to get over it? Thanks for your question, Linda. Yeah, I did deal with a lot of anger, and it still crops up from time to time with various things connected with Scientology. But a lot of my upsets now tend to go in the direction of being upset with people who do things that just, just like, what are you doing? Fellow activists even and stuff like that. But I keep that stuff, sort of behind the scenes. I don't make public displays of all that stuff. As far as my anger with Scientology, and I know that's what you're asking about, I was a very, very angry person when I first found out about the deception and the level of duplicity of Scientology. And even when I found that out, I found out, as I continue doing this work, I keep finding that the rabbit hole goes down farther and farther and farther. But 2013, that year that I've discussed before, where I went down that internet rabbit hole and found out the truth about Scientology, resulted in me feeling extremely betrayed, unbelievably angered, and very, very motivated to want to do something about it. And so here I am, 4 years later, continuing to do something about it. but I'm not anger-driven now like I was then. I made a calculated decision when I started my YouTube channel that I was not going to be using my videos to channel my anger toward, Scientology at you guys. I was going to talk in a very different way because I feel that the best way to have content that is evergreen, is always good content to watch, whether it's now or 5 or 10 years from now, is to just stick with the facts, be rational, be rational, be reasonable, and just tell you straight what's up, with Scientology or with critical thinking or whatever it is that I'm talking about. So, how did I deal with this anger? One, having a YouTube channel and talking. This is very cathartic, right? Writing a book, writing essays. I channeled a lot of my anger through my writing. And as I understand it, as I've come to learn, there's even therapies that revolve around writing out, what's in one's mind and getting it out on paper and getting one's feelings and emotions out there and experiences and whatever other things you want to, write down. And so I found that to be a very cathartic thing. I think education was also crucial to to sort of, bringing the level down on how upset I was. Talking to lots of people, other ex-members, family members of mine, to sort of like hash out the feelings and the mutual experiences with other ex-members. This is why support groups are so great sometimes, if they're well moderated. Was to be able to find out that I wasn't the only one that these things happened to. And then to find out, as I learned more about other destructive cults, to find out that Scientology wasn't even, the only thing where these things happened, where these abuses happened and civil rights and human rights abuses happened, but that there were lots of other groups and destructive cults out there where these kinds of things occur and people are abused and they come out of it and they have to figure out what to do with themselves. And the techniques that are used in those groups. The day that the light went on for me, that I went ding, when I found out that other destructive cults were doing the exact same things that L. Ron Hubbard was doing, was definitely a light bulb moment. I was like, wow. And suddenly, the world really did look a little different after that, because I had been so focused on Scientology, so sure that, it was the worst of all of them and nothing else could possibly be like this experience. Yeah, that's not true. There's a lot of things that go on in our society and on this planet of ours that are very similar to Scientology, very much like it. And while Scientology is one of the worst because of the sheer number of techniques and thought reform methods that are used as part of its dogma and part of its methodology, where you find like hundreds of these techniques being used in Scientology, other groups use a handful of them and get the results that they get on people and abuse them accordingly. So. Anyway, that was very revelatory to me, and it was very enlightening, and it was very calming. It really chilled me out a lot. And I couldn't explain necessarily all the psychology behind that, except that it just helped a lot to understand more about where I had been, what I had been through, and how I might now be able to do something more effective to help people in these groups, because that's what education does for you. Right? So I'd say the combination of those factors was what helped the most. And finally, the other thing that really can't be ignored at this point, because it's been 4 years, is letting time pass and just getting some time and distance away from the whole thing. That has also, there's just kind of no real substitute for that. You want to hurry it along. You want it to, you want the process to go. You want whatever the 5 steps of grief or whatever the recovery process, whatever model you want to use to describe the process, you kind of want the process to hurry up, but it can't hurry up. It really has to just go through the time that it has to go through. So, so those were the things I think that helped, kind of release a lot of my anger. I'm not particularly, really angry anymore. I'm not angry at any one specifically. There are a couple people that I have said I will never forgive, so I guess there's still anger there. But that's a very small number of people. I mean, we're talking about about 4 or 5 in the world of Scientology who, even if they came out, I don't know that I could ever make good with them or make up with them. They're just, the damage they did to my life was just too great. But that doesn't include former my past exes or friends or people that I knew or anything like that. I'd be happy, way happy to get back in touch with so many of them. So, and I really do hope that those guys get out. Okay, so I think that's kind of the process that I've gone through to kind of chill. And I hope that some of that might be helpful to you in your process. And if not, you can let me know, and I'll dig deeper and see if there's anything else I might be able to give you in terms of any advice or anything. But that's the best I can say right now from my own experience. Momo Vivi. I had to watch the famous Tom Cruise turtleneck Scientology video, and I have some questions on some of the things he says. We can bring peace and unite cultures. They want help, and they are depending on people who know, and that's us. Know what? And how can Scientologists bring peace? I think about those people who are depending on us. Who does he think depends on Scientology? And depending on what specifically? Being a Scientologist, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else. You know you have to do something about it. You know you're the only one that can really help. What is he talking about? Why would Scientologists be the only ones that can really help? And help in what way? Typically, you start by calling 911, and if possible, you may try to assist whoever involved, if possible, and at the best of your capabilities. Other than that, what would he do? Give an autograph and perform CPR at the same time? Yeah, I get the frustration. Tom Cruise especially. The guy is just so over the top. But he really does embody a lot of principles and ideas that Scientologists have. And they're very delusional about the level of help that they're able to offer people. I thought, even after I got out of Scientology, that I was so much more together than I was. And I thought I really had answers for things that I was clueless about. They really, and that's why I use the word delusionary. I mean, I speak from experience here. I'm not deriding Scientologists and saying they're all just a bunch of stupid, delusional numbnuts. I'm saying that they are literally suffer from delusions of grandeur. And that those delusions of grandeur come directly from L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige, who love bomb and pump them up on their importance and what their abilities and how great they are as beings and as human beings and as Scientologists, so much better than the rest of the what they call the WOG world, which is a very derogatory term, in some circles. The non-Scientology world. They really think, Scientologists really think they stand head and shoulders above everybody else. And they really do think that the help that they can provide through applying Scientology, right, to people is better than any help that can be given otherwise. Now, this is not to say that if a Scientologist came on some guy who had a broken leg, that he wouldn't think that the leg needs to be set or something. He'd want to get a doctor and he'd want to get the leg set. I mean, they're not that far gone, but they feel that if they come on an accident scene, let's take this for example, because it's a pretty easy one. Let's say they come on an accident scene and there's people in various states of confusion and don't know what to do, and there's some people who are hurt and there's upset and there's people crying and all this. A Scientologist feels like he's the guy who can step up, bring order, tell people, calm people down, get people to, the Scientologists might have the idea that it would be helpful for people to to maybe work together to give each other locationals, which is look at that tree, look at that road, look at the sky, you know, like these little mini auditing procedures that they might have people do in order to get them to focus their attention outwards rather than inwards. Or they might feel with the accident victim that they can, you know, they can't set the leg or break, you know, set a broken bone or something, but maybe in the meantime they could get everybody to stop talking because, you know, at an accident scene there's a lot of noise and people are talking, and Scientologists are really big on keeping things quiet when there's a problem, physical pain and unconsciousness involved, because they feel that those words are going to go right into the person's, you know, reactive mind and come back at them later and make their life more difficult. So they'll try to quiet everybody down and not get people talking, try to keep the scene quiet. And they think that by doing that, they're actually doing something extraordinary and special, which they're not, right? That's just total nonsense, this whole stay quiet at an accident thing. Plus, it's kind of impossible because you need to be giving people directions, you need to get people under control, and you certainly need to give some first aid and some medical assistance to the people who need it. So, I'm just saying Scientologists would feel like they're so on top of the scene because the help that they're going to bring to these people is going to be so extraordinary and do so much. And really, they're just, you know, being part of the problem in such a situation. So that's some of what Tom Cruise is thinking about, right? But it really comes down to, Hubbard actually says in a couple of places, I think, that, you know, the mere presence of a Scientologist and the positive attitude and the TRs, as they call it, right? The ability to look people in the eye and direct them on what to do is somehow, you know, so extraordinary, and that they can provide this positive control with people that they're just superhuman. Those are some of the Scientologist super abilities that they have, right? Plus, they also have the idea that they can intend things, right, to happen, and they'll just happen because Scientologists have such clean flows. That's how they put it. You know, I got clean flows, man. So they'll, you know, so they just think that they're the bomb.com, you know. That's kind of what it comes down to, and they are sorely mistaken. Dangerously talented. Why is Tone 40 called Tone 40? All right, this is pretty straightforward, actually. There is a scale in Scientology with 40 at the top and minus 40 at the bottom. This scale is called the emotional tone scale. Every emotion that is listed on the scale has a number assigned to it and is called a tone. Hubbard related emotion to the concept of motion and music, right, and vibrations, right, because sound or tone in music is a vibration, and Hubbard made an analogy that emotions are like that. This was all Hubbard's, you know, pseudoscience nonsense, but this was what he was talking about with emotions, which is why they're called tones. Okay, so you have this thing called a tone scale, and at the very top of it, at 40.0, is serenity of beingness. That is tone 40, and it is you know, the highest state of emotion and ability that a spiritual being, or as they call them in Scientology, a thetan, can accomplish or can reach. Hubbard actually says that tone 40, or being at that tone level of tone 40, as opposed to, say, 4.0, which is enthusiasm, or if I'm remembering this right, this is all just off the top of my head, or 2.0, which is antagonism, or 2.5, I think, is boredom. I mean, these are just the different levels. 1.0, I think, is fear, and 0.5 is like grief or something. 0.1 is apathy. I mean, it goes down. You know, 0 is body death, and then there's all these emotions going below 0 that are supposed to represent the degraded state of spiritual beings, or thetans. So you have total failure at the bottom, at minus 40. So at this high level, Hubbard said that's not even really the optimum emotion to be at all the time. That you should be around 20.0, and I can't remember, I think that's action. And 20.0 is, this like, you kind of get this idea of this lively, spirited, creating, wondrous sort of thing. And it's a superhuman thing. In other words, it's not something you can express through your body. You can only express such a tone level or such an emotion as a spiritual being. So now 40, tone 40, was then later, the emotional tone scale is one thing, okay? Now later on, or shortly thereafter, Hubbard came up with this concept of postulating things, or making a postulate. And a postulate in Scientology is a sort of creation without reservation, or intention without reservation. It's the idea that you're creating or putting something there as a spiritual being, and you have no doubts about it, no reservations about it, and so it's just going to happen. And when you can do that, that's called being tone 40 or tone 40. So the idea is this intention without reservation. You're just making things happen, right? You're just on. You just got green light, man. You are go, right? In every decision you're making, if you're doing it from tone 40. This is how, like you have to understand as part of this, I mean, this all sounds very like woo-woo, and it is woo-woo because, the fundamental that this is based on is the idea that Thetans are creating the entire material universe all the time. Like the only reason you see things, experience things, have a body, feel anything, is because Thetans as a collective group all agree that this physical universe exists, and we're all postulating its existence every moment in time as it continues to exist. And we've been doing it for so long that we kind of forgot that we're doing it, right? And we just kind of keep going. It's kind of like you don't have to think about it. It's like your heartbeat. You don't have to sit there and make your heartbeat. It just goes. But the analogy kind of stops there because you can't just will your heart to stop if you put attention on it. At least most of us can't. But Hubbard's idea is that you could, if you could regain control and mastery over your spiritual abilities, then you would be able to be in a position of cause over life. And being at cause over life means cause over your postulates, being aware of what you're postulating and being able to do it on purpose. And that's tone 40. So that's it's sort of this ultimate state of existence where anything is possible because you're just so damn good that you can just kind of think it into existence and it comes into existence. There you go. Lena Sith Lady. Dear Chris, love your channel. It actually makes me feel a bit more sane. I was wondering if you could describe a weekly staff meeting to us. I have heard from several former staff members how those meetings were a lot like weird AA meetings with strange winds and a lot of clapping for LRH. I am interested in the topics and the interaction during those meetings. Did you feel like you had to pretend to be enthusiastic or engaging, even if the winds seemed a bit too crazy? All right, well, there's a policy letter in Scientology called Weekly Staff Meetings that provided a step-by-step format of how staff meetings are supposed to be run. And so I'll just kind of walk through those steps. Staff meetings were usually really boring and just kind of long, dragged out, exercises that nobody was really particularly very enthusiastic about. And if there, and yes, sometimes there were wins and announcements made and things like that, and people would ha ha, rah rah. But it was all just part of the mindset. I mean, it wasn't like, there were, if you look at it now, I can look back on it and go, ooh, cringeworthy. But at the time, it was just the normal course of my life. I mean, being a staff member and being a Sea Org member, you buy into all of Scientology. And so when people are sharing wins or gains of Scientology successes, that's what you expect to be hearing. So it doesn't seem so outlandish, unless they got into some of those rather goofy videos that you see. We all kind of snickered at, or a lot of us snickered at those videos because they were just so over the top, and we weren't really into that too much. But the videos I'm talking about where the music is playing and they're, fast bang, 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 bang through all these Scientologists talking about their wins. Oh my God, win, 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 great, success, ah! Okay, so as far as the staff meetings go, the first step is flaps and handlings. So here, this is all on a weekly basis. So for the last week, division by division or area by area, staff would discuss various problems or flaps that had happened, right? Some big emergency or situation that had occurred, and what their handling was for that situation. So let's say that there was some big plumbing leak and, a whole floor had been flooded or something. And so the estates guys might need to brief on that flap. Yeah, there was a flap this week because, there was a plumbing blow up and people got kicked out of their dorms while we had to clean it all up. And the handling is then blah, 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 to not only did we clean up the mess and deal with all that, but we reinforced the pipes and got new ones installed and rack, so we're never going to have a leak again. And that might be an example of a flap and a handling. And there could be I could go on all day of the different kinds of flaps that come up and the various handlings that were demanded of the staff, to deal with those flaps. And that was always the most awkward, uncomfortable part of the staff meeting. It was the first part where you just kind of get all that out of the way and air it out and and people get to talk about how they screwed up royally that week. And and there was definitely shaming going on during this. This is a public shaming exercise for sure. It's not supposed to be. It was, supposed to be the flap and the handling, right? So, yeah, we had this big emergency or problem, but we handled the hell out of it and dealt with it. And of course, if you're in the middle of the flap or the flap happened and you didn't have any handling, then it just became a big exercise in public shaming, right? Because it was like, yeah, we crashed the income this week, and it's been crashed for the last 6 weeks, and yeah, we're gonna do this and this and this and this handling, and everybody kind of goes, yeah, great, whatever. So you can imagine the fun and games that ensue from that. The next step was general business announcements, and this was obviously different from flaps. This would be things like we're having an event this week, or this last week we had a general business announcement. Might be something like we renovated the HGC, the auditing areas, all the auditing rooms, and that's all done now, and so the org has much better auditing spaces. Or we hired 3 new guys this week as a general business announcement, and they'll stand them up, and it's Joe and Mary and Sue, and yay, we got 3 new staff, right? That might be a general business announcement. Then you have the presentation of statistics and battle plans for the week. And what that means is you have the department heads, not in a small org, you might have every single staff member talk, but generally it's supposed to be the department heads and the division heads, and then the senior executives of the organization. And that's, believe me, that's a lot. If you have all those posts filled, you're going to be there for a couple hours going over all the stats and BPs. But they're supposed to present an actual piece of paper with their production statistic, whether it was up or down, and then give the condition. In other words, what are they going to do about that statistic? If it was up, how are they going to reinforce it? If it was down or level, then how are they going to get it up, right? That's what the battle plan, the step-by-step targets that they're going to do that week in order to deal with their production statistics. So this is all kind of summarized. I mean, people didn't get into long sermons during these things, but they sometimes droned on for a while, and so and you'd have to go through the entire organization and get everybody's, at least, like I said, the division heads, department heads, their statistics, so you see how everybody in the organization did that week production-wise, and what they were planning to do in the next week, right? And it could be an informative thing if it wasn't so bloody tedious. Okay, then you have, let's see, then after all the stats and BPs was whether there was any bonus paid out for the week, and then the executives might brief on the overall battle plan and direction that the org was going for this new week that was now starting. And that would generally be and then of course there'd be a hand for L. Ron Hubbard. Everybody claps for Hubbard at the end. And that's generally how it would go. And it would usually go, sometimes for a couple hours. So like I said, tedium would set in, right? Everybody was like very happy when the staff meetings were over. Yeah, and sometimes they could get pretty ugly. some of those flaps and handlings could get pretty ugly. Sometimes when people were presenting their statistics and the statistics were pretty down and had been down, for a while, things could get pretty ugly because the executives would, start like, well, what's your battle plan for this week? Oh, well, we're going to do da-da-da-da-da. Oh, yeah? Well, what about blah, 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 and they might start, again, the public shaming ritual. So that's the kind of thing that would happen there, and I think that's a pretty thorough answer for all that. Jay Moore. I saw your video on the development of Dianetics and Scientology, but I'm still not entirely clear on a couple of things. For one, how do Scientologists regard people who only use Dianetics? Can someone use Dianetics and not be a Scientologist? Also, let's say a friend and I read Dianetics and audited each other to clear, and I decide to join the church. Could I, in theory, skip the lower grades? I know that wouldn't actually happen in practice, but I'm curious to know how the church reacts to people who try to clear themselves. Yeah, Dianetics is really just a stepping stone onto the bridge, and that's how Scientologists consider it. People can audit Dianetics all day, every day, as long as they want to, and if they get to a point where they feel that they've attained the state of clear, then the only way to get it validated as actually clear, is to go into a Scientology church and to receive a special, you walk in there and you go, I've been auditing, 200 hours of Dianetics and I feel great and I think I'm clear. They're going to go, wow, okay, well, good on you for auditing all that Dianetics. Now, they don't even know if you've been auditing Dianetics properly or not, or whether you've done it at all, unless you walk in with a folder and worksheets of what you've done. They're not going to necessarily believe that you've done all that. But if you do, and they can look at it, then they'll look at it. But they're going to want you to do the bridge, right? Because that whole bridge exists for a reason. And Hubbard said, in various places, and Miscavige has said in various places, that you got to do those grades, and you got to do the Dianetics, and you got to do it in the sequence, in that particular sequence. So basically, Dianetics is kind of relegated, like Book 1 auditing, the kind you're talking about, where you team up with somebody and audit out of the book, Dianetics, Modern Science, Mental Health. That kind of thing is relegated to sort of an introductory service for Scientologists, right? It's a thing to whet your appetite and get you on the main line of the bridge to total freedom. So if you insisted, you came in and you said, look, I've had 1,000 hours of Dianetics auditing, I feel wonderful, I must be clear, and I'm clear, damn it, and you just keep saying that, then they'll eventually get you onto what's called the Clear Certainty Rundown. There's a special auditing action that is supposed to, that the point of the Clear Certainty Rundown is to find out exactly, if you went clear, when you went clear, what happened when you went clear, and then validate that that's actually true and that you have achieved the state of clear. And if you can't cough up what's called the clear cognition, at some point along the line in doing this CCRD, Clear Certainty Rundown, then you're not going to be validated as clear, okay? And that clear cognition is along the lines of, oh, I realize I've been mocking up my own reactive mind. In other words, I've been creating this thing called the reactive mind. I've been kind of putting it there. You remember earlier I talked about postulating things, right? So the person's supposed to come to a realization that they've been the one creating that reactive mind, and they don't have to do that anymore. And so the reactive mind kind of is supposed to fade away and go away. That's your clear cognition. And unless you say something like that going in there, they're not going to particularly believe that you're clear. And also, of course, you have to say that to the right people, because if you're saying it to people who themselves aren't clear, they're not going to know the clear cognition because it's super hush confidential for obvious reasons. So that's part of the process of going clear in Scientology. So they're going to want you to do, the lower level auditing. And they'll encourage you to do Book 1 Dianetics. I mean, they won't stop you. You want to go in there and do that, they'll let you do it all day, every day, But you will get to a point where you're going to get pretty sick and tired of it, and they're going to go, good, now move on to these, the rest of the bridge. Okay, it is time for Flash Answers. Andrea Diamond. In the JWs, they have PMOs, physically in, mentally out. In the LDS, they have Shadow Mormons. The vast majority of the PMOs and the SMs stay in is because they don't want to be disfellowshipped or shunned. What are these types of members called in Scientology, and is the main reason because they don't want to be disconnected? They are called under the radar, UTRs. And yeah, the number one reason that people remain under the radar is because they don't want to be disconnected, from their family and their friends. And that's really the simplicity of it. Teresa Wakefield. Chris, I've watched most of your videos and quite a few from other ex-Scientologists, but I still don't understand the point of the organization. If most Scientologists believe the goal is to clear the earth, why don't they put their time, money, and efforts into getting all Sea Org members up the bridge? I'm shocked to hear so many Sea Org ex-members say they did not want auditing. I thought that was the point. Thanks for your efforts here. I'm sure you have saved lives already. Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, the point is to get everybody up the bridge. And this is, you're actually asking a point that, is exactly on the line of why I believe that David Miscavige is not really truly a Scientologist and doesn't really believe in the subject. Because if he did, then getting the Sea Org up the bridge to OT, the OT levels, would be the top priority, or one of the top priorities, because they're the ones who are supposed to be clearing the planet, right? Clearing the whole world. So, you'd think, plus they're the workforce, they're the primary workforce of Scientology, so you'd think they're the ones who should be getting the most benefits from it. But that's not the case. And in fact, most of the time, it's exactly the opposite, where they have their study time taken away from them. They don't, get auditing or training to mount to a hill of beans over a long, over a period of time. And so the whole thing kind of goes nowhere. So that's why I've always said that it's, kind of the whole thing is a little bit ridiculous. The point of Scientology is to make money. And that it does very well. Uper0987. If Scientology got a new leader who was actually a good person, would that organization start to grow instead of decreasing in members? Well, not at this point. Scientology's dead and it just doesn't know it yet. I mean, that's really the bottom line with Scientology. I don't care who's leading it, right? But I get your point, and no, it still wouldn't turn it around. Scientology is doomed, man. It's just not. It's not coming back. You could turn it into a kindler, gentler Scientology. I have discussed how you could actually keep it going, but it would be such systemic changes that it wouldn't even really be recognizable as Scientology anymore. So there you go. Okay, guys, thanks very much for listening and watching and checking out what I had to say here. I hope you found my answers informative, illuminating, educational, and entertaining. Thanks for coming around. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.